Alrighty, so for week 3 Learn Together, in addition to the doing the arrow functions, I already had my CRUD operations done. I worked on my Dev 1 code. I actually ended up getting rid of moments.js, which I also got rid of it in this code. So I went to the international date form, which allows you to pass in a really fun thing, which is a style and a date. So that was kind of fun. And then format. And then when you call dot format, you have to have instantiated a new date before that. Now, once I did that, it was fairly easy to work with. I feel like it was much better than the standard JavaScript date object. So the other change I made, I decided this is something I'd been wanting to do, is I changed my inputs to an object, and I called it inputs. It was an input before I was calling it new object. And then I grabbed all the inputs where I had two lines that first defined the variable and then got the value from the form. I decided to just do it all in one line, kind of condense it a little bit. And I also did a parse int because I ended up doing what I'll show you next, which was some more one more what I would call granular form validation, to where before, if any of the fields that were required were not submitted, I just gave a one global message. Kind of not what you'd probably do in a real world, so I wanted to do a little better. So to use the truthy falsy, what I ended up doing is once I had my inputs in an object, I set up a local variable called form in error, and I called form validation passing in the inputs. That form validation is setting, of course, in my functions, because as all my functions should. So then I kept the name on the local scope for form validation. I set up that array, and then I asked some if questions, if certain values, and this is why I had to do the parse int. And then for the three inputs that required validation, if, of course, and this is nothing new for us, we've seen this now a couple times, updating this array and then asking if error message greater than 0 length, then return. Now this is what happens. So if the code runs and there's nothing that's been updated in the validation, right? Meaning everything's fine, then it's going to return, and that variable that I declared over here then would be undefined. Okay. And so here, if I said if error form an error, okay, which would be that, then I would join these together. So let me just show you how this runs. So let's just say I gave a gym time, or a current time, but not a gym time, which, by the way, as I was looking at this, I was like, you know what? I'm doing all these things that really make more sense to actually do a drop down for the time. But I actually did that in my Dev 1, and I saw Brian. Brian did that with his, which was awesome. But in this case, if I don't provide gym time or a date, then what happens, and I'll just let this run, is that I then get gym time and day, because that's the more granular, meaning here's the ones that you're in error, right? And so in this case, I also clearer, and you want to do this either on a valid submission or not. You could discuss whether you wouldn't do it on a valid and give them the opportunity to do it. I guess we could talk about that, but I would go ahead and do this. Driving Monday, take off my point here. Okay. So the other thing I did, oh, I got to clear this. I realize this, was I gave just some content to show number of suggestions. Actually, now I should have cleared this one beforehand, right? Because in here where I go in and actually do provide, right? Then I have total number of suggestions 1, currently showing 0 unrated, meaning there's nothing here. So that's what I did for my week 11. Make sure, like I said, you clear those input fields. If you choose not to do it on validation, that's cool, but on a valid form submission, you definitely want to clear those. I do it, which I think is relatively simple, and I haven't seen anything that says it's not a good idea. Is I just call a reset form query selector on the form itself and just hit a reset. Okay. The key also for me doing this was having those default fields as a value of 0 so I could use my validation. All right. See you later.